Welcome to We Don't Have Cookies with your host, Jason Marshall.
Hey everybody, thanks for downloading the show. It's the first show in the month of July, and that's pretty important for two reasons. The first reason is that July is the first month in the months of Jason. If you take the first letter from this month and the next 4 months, it spells my name. That's why it's the months of Jason. I always try to do fun things during those months. The second reason is, at the end of the month, the podcast will be having its 3-year anniversary episode on Monday, July 30th, which is the day the podcast first launched. So leading up to that, I'm going to be talking to people who have impacted the podcast in the last 3 years. If you listen to this on the day it comes out, it's Independence Day here in the U.S., A lot of podcasters are going to be celebrating by putting out patriotic episodes and American guests and themes, but not me. I'm having somebody on from the UK, which is basically the equivalent of spending my wedding anniversary with my ex-girlfriend while I leave my wife at home listening on speakerphone. My first guest today has been on the podcast quite a few times in the past and was actually on the podcast this time last year. It's the one and only ChooChooStu. Stu, how you doing?
Oh, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Good to be back again. How are you? You're looking very dapper, very trim and slim. So,
thank you.
Congratulations on getting your body toned up for summer.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
I have been meaning to do that myself for probably the last 8-9 years.
Same here, man.
I've been turning more and more into a potato as time goes by. You're there sporting a 6-pack probably, and I've got like a whole keg. But I have taken inspiration from you, Jason. I'm actually now on a weight loss diet, and I'm just over a week in.
That's nice, man. If you need any help, let me know. I'll be happy to do so.
I haven't really been exercising much, but I'm watching what I eat. I've just stopped putting all the food in my mouth. At work is the worst, you know. You get a bit bored. And you go and buy a cup of tea or coffee and you think, well, I'll just take that bar of Snickers and packet of chips and whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you've just had like 500-600 calories.
I'll be honest with you, and nobody tell Mark Jansen I said this, but the first 6 weeks during the 6-week challenge when I was trying to lose weight, I think I exercised the first week, and after that, all I did is walk, and I lost all that weight. So you can do it without exercise. Just make sure you watch that diet, man.
Well, I have been cycling, albeit on an electric bike. And I've been down the allotment plot, so I've been doing work in there, you know.
Well, I want to ask you something about our two countries, Stu. As a Brit, are you sad we left? Do you want us back? Are you happy we've moved on? Where do you stand on our country's relationships?
We've always had a special relationship, so I've been told.
We've stayed friends.
Yeah. I think we'll always be friends. Have you moved on from us?
Well, I got to tell you something, Stu. A lot of times when we're talking to the Prime Minister of Canada, we're thinking about the Prime Minister of Britain. That's some real talk right there.
Do you know, I've always been embarrassed whenever our Prime Minister has met a president. The president always looks, you know, very cool and in charge and, you know, standing there quite mean. And we've had people like John Major that sort of look like a right dick alongside them. Do you know what I mean? Sort of running after their tails. And I always found it quite embarrassing. We need to get someone that's really sort of up there, like macho. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like a Winston Churchill. You know?
Yeah. We need someone like that back again. All of ours have been like pussies, you know.
Well, Stu, I got a throwback to the older days of the podcast. For newer listeners, Stu used to do a segment called Totally from the UK Today, a.k.a. Totally Fucked. We're going to bring that back real quick with the story that I found from your part of the world where a man scaled a lamppost that was 10 meters tall for people in the U.S. That's 32 feet. And he was just up there dangling. Apparently he was in his underwear, was up there for about an hour. And one of the people who came to rescue him called in and was quoted as saying the man is under the influence of an illegal high. A lot of times when sports teams win things here, people climb lampposts and things like that. How often does that happen in your country? I gotta assume it's not very often.
It was obviously an attention seeker. But maybe he thought he was invisible or something like that. I don't know. I've never known it before. I've never known it.
Okay.
It is one way it could get some attention.
Well, maybe it'll take off. I know here in the U.S., like I said, when sports teams are going at it, they go around greasing lampposts so people can't climb them. Maybe you guys can get that started over there. Do you see that as something that'll ever catch on?
I mean, if you've got a point to make, a statement to make, then do it on a busy place like a motorway or, a really busy highway. I think it could be good. And maybe if the pants are big enough, you could have a message written on them.
What could get you to climb a lamppost? What are you so passionate about that you think,
Saying that, we did have the Fathers for Justice who would dress up. They're basically, the divorced parents, and the father, seems to get a hard deal all the time. And so they would dress up as like superheroes and do silly things like that, like dangle off of a railway bridge or something and stay up there for days. So what would get me to do that? I don't know, to be honest. If it was in my underpants, it'd have to be something quite big. It'd have to be me searching for fame or something.
If you were in the Fathers of Justice League and had to dress up as a superhero, which one would it be?
I'll probably have to be like Robin from Batman and Robin.
I would think it would be Superman. That way you got the S on your chest and you can...
Yeah.
Like, this is the lamest double entendre ever. It's Superman and Stu. It's still still means two things though.
I could be Choo Man, couldn't I? A big steal.
I like it. Stu is part of a podcast called Cave Crew Radio, but you can also hear him on his own podcast called The Podcast Factor. What can people expect to hear on that show, and where can they find it?
Well, you can find it on all the usual podcast places. I believe we're on Google Play now, Spotify, iTunes, and pretty much everywhere, I believe. But what can you expect to find? Well, I listen to hours and hours of podcasts every week. So I basically deliver you bite-sized chunks of podcasts. So you don't have to download the whole show. You will get little segments of each show. And I usually do about 4 or 5 clips per week. But I have found something quite spectacular this week to play, amongst some other things. Now, you get shows that are, focused on cooking, politics, music, whatever. But I have found a show that focuses on wood. And that is the knock-on type, as opposed to any other, and I've made my dog bark, as opposed to any other type of wood that you might be thinking of. And I just found it absolutely amazing. And whether it's, I have sent you a clip, whether it's actually a real thing, whether it's some kind of straight man doing comedy, I don't know really.
And I have listened to it. It is not a show about woodworking. It is not a show about arborists talking about trees. These people just straight up love wood, whether it's still a living tree or in somebody's wood shop. Again, like I said, I know I just said wood shop, but they don't really talk a lot about what they make. They just talk about what kinds they like and what they use to make them with. It's one of the most fascinating podcasts I've heard in a long time.
And it's sort of like, it's mesmerizing. Once you start listening, you can't stop.
You got that right.
There was 4 episodes. I've listened to them all, and I'm going back to listen to them all again today.
And the beautiful part is it's pretty bite-sized. I mean, they're about 11 to 15 minutes each. You can get through them all pretty quick, and it's a lot of fun, even if you hate wood.
Yeah. I mean, I'm into plastics myself.
It is a great podcast. I listened to an episode right before I came on to the show with you. You sent me a link to their podcast on iTunes. What'd you say it was called again? Wood Enthusiasts?
Wood Enthusiasts. When I listen to it, I'm thinking someone else has got to hear this. Is it just me that finds it funny? Oh,
so
man.
Make sure you tune into the Podcast Factor this week so you can hear what we're talking about.
It should be on the next episode anyway.
All right. Well, Stu, I know you got a busy day ahead of you, so I'm going to wrap this up. But I want to thank you for all you've done for the show in the past 3 years. It's been a pleasure.
3 years, it's gone so quick.
Yeah, it has. Well, it might be Independence Day here in the U.S., but earlier this week it was Canada Day. So I'm going to play a song by the Canadian band The Arrogant Worms called We Are The Beaver, and I'll be back.
The U.S. is the eagle, Russia is the bear, Australia is the kangaroo, 'cause they're kinda weird down there. Yeah, India is the tiger that stands so proud and tall, but Canada is the greatest of them all. We are the beaver, we're furry and we're free, yeah, we are the beaver. Yeah, we are the beaver. We can chew right through small trees. We are the beaver. We are the beaver. We are the beaver. You might think a rodent is a pretty lame choice for a national animal, but don't you listen to that voice. No, 'cause all them birds and predators just take from the land. But the beaver always gives a damn. We are the beaver. We got cute little web feet. Yeah, we are the beaver. It's bark we like to eat. Yeah, we are the beaver. The nickel we complete. Yeah, we are the beaver. We are the beaver. We are the beaver. The eagle flies the skies above and swoops down on its parade. The big bear will maul anyone who dares gets in its way. The tiger is the greatest of the hunters today. But the beaver, it can build dams. Yeah, the beaver, it can build dams. Dams. We are the beaver. It's like our tails, the dangers nearby. We are the beaver. We got waterproof hides, yeah, we are the beaver. We got big bums and beady eyes. We are the beaver. We are the beaver. We are the beaver. Yeah, we are the beaver. Our name is often used as a double entendre. We are the beaver. 'Cause in Canada both French and English belong. Yeah, we are the beaver. And the subject of this song is we are the beaver. We are the beaver. We are the beaver. Yeah, what are we? We are the beaver. We are the beaver. We are the beaver. Are you sick of it yet? We are the beaver. We are the beaver. We are the beaver.
Want to contact the show? Send an email to jason@wedon'thavecookies.com or call 929-266-9342 and leave a voicemail.
Like I said right before the break, it's Independence Day here in the U.S., but it was Canada Day this past Monday. I love Canada, and I wanted to have a comedian from Canada on the show, but at the last minute, things didn't work out. The guy has spent most of the day drunk and yelling at people on social media, so I think I dodged a bullet by not having him on the show. I was really looking forward to putting out a podcast with Brits and Canadians on Independence Day. It's not an anti-U.S. statement. I love my country. I just thought it would be funny, but there's always next year, I suppose. I want to give a couple of listener shout-outs real quick. First, thanks to Lone Wolf GAM on Instagram for the follow and for the suggestion on what to name my betta fish. He was listening to old episodes of the podcast and thought Domino would be a good name. Longtime listeners know I have a pretty strong hatred for Domino's Pizza, but I will consider it. I'm going to leave the naming my fish open until the 3-year anniversary episode, so if you'd like to name my fish, check out the We Don't Have Cookies Instagram account to see a picture of him and either leave a comment there or send it to me in email, tweet, or whatever. I also found out it was Jason Lampro, the host of the Mixed Media Forest podcast, who left the review on Podbean, so big shout out to him. If anybody else out there would like to get a shout out on the show, please leave a positive review wherever you're listening to this and let me know about it, and I'll give you a shout out on the show too. I really appreciate all the reviews on different podcast platforms and all the comments I get on social media, so please keep that up. It makes my day when I see something from you guys. And speaking of hearing from you guys, I got a message from a listener named Chris Doyle in Australia. He gave me permission to read this on the show. Here's what he sent. Hey, Jason, I thought I would run this past you, as you seem to have a few run-ins with ghost balloons. Last week, I had some bad news that my granddad had passed away back in Ireland, so I jumped on a plane and flew home for his funeral, which was last Wednesday. While I was in Ireland, I stayed with my parents who live 100 yards from my aunt and uncle in the country. Not many neighbors close by. On Friday, it was my cousin's birthday, and me and my dad were awake early that morning at 5 a.m., and we noticed something blowing about in the yard. So we went out to check what it was. It was a half-deflated helium balloon that said happy birthday on it. No one was nearby having a party. We have no idea where it came from. We ended up tying it to a bush where we found it. Freaky shit. Sit by my granddad, perhaps? Well, first off, Chris, I want to give my condolences to you and your family for your loss. I thought it was a pretty interesting story, and it does sound like a sign from him from the other side. I gotta admit, I've never really believed in paranormal stuff very much until I bought this house. And after having so many different experiences, I'm very open-minded to that kind of stuff now. And with that said, I have heard back from the paranormal investigator that I talked about on the last episode, and he has agreed to check out my house with his team, and I'll be talking to them about that and what they find, if anything, on the Halloween episode, along with guest paranormal enthusiast, psychic, and comedian Karen Rontowski, and her friend, who is also a paranormal enthusiast, animal communicator, and comedian Sonia King. Both of them have been on the podcast before, and I'm looking forward to having them back. Somebody else who is going to be coming back very soon is Father Time. He will be my guest on next week's episode for the first time since 2005. You don't want to miss that. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is a good time to do that. I have a lot of guests lined up for the next few weeks, and the 3-year anniversary episode is going to be great. Monday, July 30th is the date for the 3-year anniversary, and to thank everybody for sticking with the podcast during the rough times. I am going to be releasing another huge episode that week. On August 1st, I will be hosting Cookie Palooza 2018, which will feature most of the musical contributors to the podcast, like Trevor Strong from the Arrogant Worms, just played a song by him. Mike Furman, who you may also know from his old band Hard and Firm with Chris Hardwick, and many more. That is going to be a really fun way to kick off the next season of the podcast. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and please help spread the word about the show by telling people and leaving reviews. I'm going to be putting a lot more into the show, and I hope you enjoy it. My last doctor appointment for the year will be tomorrow if everything goes well, and that will allow me to focus a little less on my health and a lot more on this. So things are looking good all around, and I think that's a good place to end this. So thanks for downloading the show. I'll talk to you next Wednesday.
Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the show and leave a review. See you next time.
we've had people like John Major that sort of look like a right dick